Tonight on Chimstock Africa, we explore the stories of various women who have been on this show as we look at the challenge of being a woman in the marketplace. Tonight on Chimstock Africa.
Please like this video and leave a comment below. Let's know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell button and share this video with somebody.
From Cape Town to Cairo and from Mogadishu to Dakar, this is Chimstock Africa. And now here's your host, Chim Onyibilanma.
Hi there, and welcome to this week's episode of your show. Thank you so much for joining us. Like I said in the introduction, today we want to go on a journey of revisiting the various interviews we've had with women leaders from across the continent. We've had the privilege on this show over the years to have some very inspiring women leaders. Tonight we want to do a kind of collage of the various insights that came from these women as we consider the issue of the challenges that women face in rising up to be leaders in the marketplace, particularly Christian women. Now, I want to say this, each of these women, the interview with each of these women were particularly inspiring. And if you haven't had the opportunity of listening to the full-length interview I had with these women, as we introduce their answers to the various questions, I will encourage you to take down their name, go to our YouTube channel and just sit down and be inspired by the full-length interview with these women. Now, the first question I want to extract from these interviews with the women is, what are the challenges that women face in rising up in the marketplace as leaders, and why do they face this challenge?
I remember flying to Cape Town one morning, and in the business class, you have to pass even if you're going to economy, and people have access to newspapers all over the airport. I could see people reading Business Day. It was on the front page. My face was there. My face being there. And obviously the person sitting next to me, he's not sure whether to show me. And the shame and the pain, because do I just keep quiet or do I just explain myself? But I have to just buckle in. I have to take it in, because they are just being presented with a story, and I must just let that process be, because they are consuming information, consuming news. My mother at work, at church, sometimes you go, even some people at church will give you a side eye wondering if did she do it, did she not do it. But also what was interesting was that what was on the public domain is not what I was charged for. I was charged for some ridiculous thing that I restructured without a board resolution. That there were people that were not supposed to be appointed, things that had nothing to do with me. Because remember, my boss had left and I had to assume because I was originally the Group Chief Operations Officer. Then I assumed the Group CEO position. But
was it interim CEO?
Yes, at that time. But I only knew this board for 2 weeks and they fired me. They suspended me because of some dynamic issues around the SASSA contract, a multi-billion rand contract where certain things needed to be reversed and everything. And I had a position, I had a posture around some of the things that I was not in agreement with. And then there were spurious allegations against me, ridiculous, trivial, vexatious and frivolous things. But what was in the public domain, I'm like, what is that? What contracts are they? Apparently, I extended a contract without authorization. There was nothing of that. And all of this is in the public domain. But, as I said, media houses wanted, newspaper houses wanted to have exclusives with me so that I can say my piece, give my side of the story, and I chose to be silent. I chose to be silent because I needed to gather all my thought. My focus was on justice. My focus was on the righteous fight, because I didn't want, because once they've done, there's a next victim. You know, they don't care about you. They just want to sell newspapers. They want a voice clip just to sell, you know. And this was a real issue for me. Every day in the morning when you take children to school, on the radio, this is a news issue. On TV, this is a news issue. Your name is all over. You can't even hide. And there's your mother who is so committed to goodness, to righteousness, you know, well respected at church. I'm the first child, you know, I'm a apple of her eye, you know, and all of a sudden, but we thought she's upright, we thought she's, you know, she's righteous, she has integrity. Now all of a sudden, this is being thrown around, you know. Oh, hi, what kind of a child are you raising? You know what it does to a parent. My children, I had to sit them down and explain that this is what's happening. It's gonna get brutal. It's not gonna get easy. You know me. You know what I'm about. Mommy is gonna fight this. Remember, I don't have taxpayers' money. They have unending, limitless resources. I had to use all the resources that I have to fight because I believed in justice. And because most of our my peers, my colleagues, sometimes they give up the fight because it can be resourceful, it can be financially draining, and out of being broken, they end up giving in. This is one fight I was prepared. I was prepared to lose everything because I knew that I'd done nothing wrong. I knew that I'd done nothing wrong, and I took it to the court of heavens. I laid it bare before my God, and I said, if God is for me, who can be against me? And I took it all the way. And when we went to arbitration, even the arbitrator was just shocked that, you know, is this the case? Contrary to what was on the public domain. So it was painful, the pain and the shame, the vindication, and even people that were supposedly your friends starting to doubt you and whispering, you know, without coming to you to find out what are the facts. And also that gave me an opportunity to know who my real friends were.
You know your friends when the pain
comes. Exactly. You know, when days are dark, friends are few. My phone stopped ringing, you know, but it was okay because I had the love of God. I entered into God's rest. At the same time though, there is a goodness out of this whole experience because, as you're saying, I was right there.
Lack of trust. So people don't do business with us because they think that we are not trustworthy. A lot of people are afraid to come to our markets because they believe they will be duped. They are not even sure that their lives and property will be safe.
The last thing, Pastor, for me, which is important as a leader, is to ensure that we empower young people. We empower women. Women have been left behind because every time I'm on the continent, oh, I thought you were a man. Sometimes people call Mr. Snowy. And when I come as a woman, and then they are, oh, you are a woman. So the perception of a woman leader on the continent also has to be improved to make sure that we empower young women, we empower young men to become future leaders.
The common denominator among all these women is the fact that against all odds, they rose up to become outstanding leaders in their field, in their countries, even in the continent. And the question is, what mindset, what particular mindset or frame of mind or attitude, what made them stand out as they did?
I have a passion to break barriers, to transcend limitations. And up till then, I was finding it hard to find a woman-founded, a woman-run, both woman-founded and woman-run financial institution in Africa that was clearly a leader. And so a desire was birthed in me to found, not just to run, but to found and to run a financial institution that would be a clear leader in the markets, and not just a Nigerian leader, but an African leader, and will be able to win the same kind of accolades and awards that I had won at ABLA, but will be a homegrown African business. I remember on the ABLA night, for example, I saw one or two, you know, I listened, you know, there was a particular business that was founded by a couple, and that business was one of the awardees on that night. And I said to myself, you can do this.
Wow.
For me, it's always to show others that this can be done.
It's possible.
So I wanted to show the little girl I had been all those years ago that women can found businesses. These businesses can become institutions. These businesses can become known across borders.
Wow.
And these businesses can endure. Because one of the challenges we also find with African businesses sometimes is
Doesn't
that
go beyond
they're
one
not able to,
generation.
God bless you,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons why I am involving the next generation
Yeah,
in a
this-
lot of what I
wow.
am doing, so that we can build something that can endure. Obviously, also access to finance is very dear to my heart. And I am very conscious of the difficulty that African SMEs and African entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs, have raising funding across the continent. So Emerging Africa for me is a vehicle that can bring financial solutions to the underserved across the continent, starting from my own nation, which is Nigeria, and starting from my own constituency, which is women.
So I grew up between two boys. So I grew up like a tomboy. I rode bicycles, climbed trees. I did what my brothers did, essentially, especially my older brother. And the way we were raised, my parents didn't raise us like, you're a girl, you can't do this, you must do this because you're a girl. No. We were raised to sort of like express ourselves, you know. And then I also grew up being exposed to a lot of creativity, live performances. We had, when we were in Ibadan, we had the arts theater there. You know, a lot of foreign students coming up to put up stage performances, sets, you know, and all of that. So I grew up seeing people do things, so to speak. I saw things grow. I saw people plant things. I saw people nurture things and wait patiently for it to bloom, you know, and all of that. And so I think the kind of mindset that gave me was, you can essentially do whatever it is you put your mind to. But you have to understand that things don't just happen overnight. You have to nurture them with the right balance of learning, prayers, and everything else that is involved. You can start anything and you can grow it to maturity.
It came as an inspired idea. I was going to turn 40, and from when I left Punch in 2014, precisely in February, I got agitated. I wanted to know what more could there be to me. I left Punch because I wanted a lighter schedule, basically. I loved everything about being a reporter. I loved everything about the opportunities that organization gave me. I loved the growth part. I loved every single thing, except that for the other areas of my life where I also had goals, I felt I was beginning to lose touch and lose track. So it was time for me to put my hearts together and decided, okay, let me look for something that can offer me a lot more time. But along the line, I told myself, you're going to be 40 in 2015. You need to be pretty sure you are still supposed to be on this lane. I have this funny way of saying it. I'll say, I don't want to get to heaven's gate. And then God will tell me that you did not do the exact thing I wanted you to do. So there's that part of me as a child of God. So he saw me through going for Word of Faith Bible Institute. I just wanted to be in an environment that's owned by Winners Chapel. I wanted to be in an environment where I could easily hear whatever God wanted to tell me. And I had my moments of praying and talking to God and saying that, look, and there was an interesting way I kept saying it to God. I'll say, God, you know that I know my name, right? I believe he said yes. And then I'll say, when this idea will be communicated, make sure it's as clear as I know my name. And that's exactly what God did, the power of asking and having your answers. So in October, the idea just flashed through my mind, character development. I'm like, what's that? Started research the entire November. I was researching to know what this is about. Tried to look for who is doing this in Nigeria, because yes, from being close to people who are in business, I know that you should always check for who, before you step into anywhere, check for those who are already doing what you're doing. So I did that search, couldn't find one in Nigeria, found people doing things that are within the corridors of it though, but found two organizations in the UK, one in the UK, one in the US, that could serve as mentors from afar. And so that said, we started with a free platform of talk. So I'll come, I give a talk, and then we have a discussion. It was almost like starting from a talk show platform, but it's totally free. For me, that was like me looking for an opportunity to convince myself that this thing is worth running with.
Okay, I thought I wanted to be a doctor because if you were good in the sciences, when I was growing up, you were a doctor. If you're good in the arts, you're a lawyer. However, I soon discovered that whenever I was talking about being a doctor, I was describing the building my hospital was going to be in it. So the building is going to be white, the building is going to be this, the building is going to be that. It didn't take me long to realize that I was not interested in medicine, I was interested in the building. Beyond that, I'd been taken to see Versailles, which is the summer palace of one of the kings of France at about age 3. So I was awed by the buildings of Paris at that age. So I was fascinated with building, and also I'm a creative soul. And when I decided it was architecture, it suddenly clicked, because architecture is the nexus of art and science. It is the science that is an art. It is a functional art. It's not just like a painting. It's a sculpture that you live in, that you experience, a sculpture that must stand. It is also a sculpture that moves your emotions. So it's very, very subjective. It's not just a building. It's something you enter into and you gasp. So architecture, it had to be.
How do we turn that around and begin to bring economic activity to where the people are? So we are busy with a few things in the rural areas, in the townships.
I know you told me you've done some tourism you're bringing into areas.
Absolutely. The world wants to come see Africa, and every time they come into South Africa, for example, and I deal a lot with international tourists, they'll be like, okay, we see this is lovely, and it looks like where we come from, where's Africa? Then we take them on a safari, and they'll be, this is great, now we've seen the wild side of Africa, the wildlife, where are the people? You staging this thing, this is how, you're showing us, this is how they dance, this is how they
dance for them.
Correct, this is how they dance, this is how they live.
But where do they live?
But where are they doing this thing for real? So I just have such a passion to create beautiful areas where tourists, international tourists, can come, be safe, and be able to experience Africa.
And still be in the midst of the people.
And the experience that we are creating says, do not come and observe, but come and participate. So when you're there, you're able to go and see a mama baking cake on an open fire and participate and taste, instead of seeing Africa as a zoo that needs to come and be observed. People want to come and be a part.
You come and be part of it. You know, it's interesting often to hear the kind of difficulties that some of these women had to overcome. And I just want to share a few of the testimonies and experiences that some of these women had to go through to get to where they are.
Mona Matthews is structured to use independent contractors. So all our shoemakers run their own little workshop. And the reason for that is because when I started, I didn't have any money to set up a factory, but also because my friend who I spoke to and advised me to go to the business school told me that that shouldn't be a problem because Nike is the biggest shoe brand in the world and they don't have a factory, so I can just outsource production. So we started. Now, the shoemakers were very good, but they were not as good as I wanted. So I needed to work with them to upskill, to improve their skills and make sure that they could continuously produce the quality that I want, And so it's been a nurturing process. It's been slow. It's been a lot of work. It's not exactly profitable at the beginning because there are lots of mistakes that you have to, pass through and all of that. And just building up the people themselves and letting them understand the fact that this has to be done properly all the time. People say to me, what's your biggest challenge? But what I found in working with God is that every challenge, depending on how you approach it, is actually a stepping stone to where God wants you to be. One of my earliest challenges, for instance, in my business was that a lot of people who were making shoes for men, not women. But I wanted to make shoes for women as well as men. And the materials available in the market were not suitable for women per se. And even if you found them, they were not fashionable. So we had to start making things. I remember one particular style of shoes that we were making. We had to actually go to Aba and carve the soles from wood, yes, and then bring them to Lagos and then begin to build the shoes on it. That design has become one of my mainstays, one of my best sellers today. I no longer use the wood because I no longer have to. The people who bring in things, they've started bringing the appropriate thing. But the thing is that I didn't rest on my oars and say, I can't find it, it's not in the market. I learned that you could make it.
Create what you
want and just, work around the challenges.
So the first one I would say is there have been times when you knew that you had somebody on your team that you should have let go. But I was sentimental and I didn't let them go. And later, they actually, in one case, the person actually went ahead and committed a fraud on my watch. And I felt like if I had, when I knew that this person didn't belong, if I had taken the decision then the organization would have been spared that experience. Luckily, it was a small one, it wasn't a massive one, but it was still an error of judgment on my part. Second thing that I definitely regret was my first experience as a CEO was not that successful at all. In fact, it was not successful at all. And I think it was because I was not realistic enough about what the business could achieve. And probably also, the Bible says the arm of flesh will fail you. So I thought that, if I put all these things we had learned into place, everything will fall into place by itself. It didn't, and I didn't realize early enough. And so we were racking up losses. But it was a blessing because by the time I left, unfortunately, the person that came under me was not even able. I was just managing to sustain the business, though it was making losses. The person that came on after me essentially just brought the whole house down. But I also feel responsible because I was also part of the selection of that person.
Now, at the Chamber of Commerce, all businesses are there, from the largest, your listed blue chip companies are there as members, but to your smallest, the one in the township.
Yeah, the guy just starting off.
Correct. Now, in South Africa, and I think Africa over, trying to redefine the business economic environment means these businesses, the largest, the smallest, need a place to meet so that they can do meaningful business with each other. Now, when you begin to see people that don't have that as the objective, and they don't see that, and instead are driving their own personal agendas for a quick win, how much money can I make? Never mind that I don't actually create a environment that facilitates
and enables
the small one and the big ones. The big ones also need the small ones. So it's an enabling environment,
for everybody.
Correct, that grows the economic pie. That for me was always the hardest, and having to deal with such people at very senior levels that are there for themselves and not for the greater good. I always find that very disheartening.
Now, one thing I always ask the women is what they have learned from their experience in rising as leaders in the marketplace.
Well, for me, one of the things that sustains me in my business is the fact that I heard from God about even starting this kind of business.
He led me into it.
Yes. That sustains me because there are times when you feel like, man, this thing is not working. I'm out of here, Secondly, I remember when I started, one of the key things in my mind was, as a nation, we cannot continue to consume. We need to produce,
So for me, the key lessons was, if I had a chance to run a business again, I would double and triple check every aspect of my plans to be sure that indeed my projections were realistic and I would not proceed with anything unless I was sure it would work. And very importantly, that I would not depend on the flesh, I would depend on God. So I asked God for more opportunities, and by the grace of God, the next opportunity I had to be a CEO, I was highly successful. The next one after that, I was even more successful. And the one that I am on now, by His grace, it's been extremely successful. And for me, every time I remember that the real key to my success today are the lessons, the things I learned never to do again, is what I did wrong.
That was your school?
That was my school. Unfortunately, it was not free of charge. It was painful for me. It was equally painful for the owners of the business.
Yeah. How does one define success for a woman? I mean, he even said that would sound as if I'm being, what's the word now? Chauvinistic. I mean, why would you say success for women? Success is success, whether it's a man or a woman. But in the context of what we are saying, how do these women see success? How do they define success?
True success is when the creation of God fulfills the reason for which it was created. So, if a Lamborghini fails to tow your Range Rover, it is not a failure. It is not meant to tow. But if a 16-wheeler, as ugly as it is, tows your Range Rover, it is successful. So I'm successful when God says, yes, you are doing what I called you to do.
Wow.
When money becomes a measure of success, we're in trouble. Because how much money is enough money?
It goes without saying, this is the last days. God is raising up phenomenal women in different spheres and different places, because we need these mothers in Israel, in these places, to bring about God's agenda at this time. And if you're a woman, I trust that you've been inspired and challenged to be all that God's called you to be. If you're a man, I trust that you've been enlightened about what God is doing. This is where we'll draw the curtain. Once again, I want to encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, to sit down in our YouTube and watch a full-length interview of some of those women that we gave you clips from their interview today. Thank you so much for joining us this week. I'll see you same station, same time next week. Ciao.
Please like this video and leave a comment below. Let's know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell button and share this video with somebody.